Hi, I'm Judy Matusky, bringing you one simple recipe. We are roasting vegetables. I'm Judy Matusky. I'm a registered dietitian and a culinary nutritionist, and we're working on building our healthy pantry. So we continue this week focusing on veggies because we want you eating more. So this week it's roasting vegetables 101, because I do get a lot of questions about how to do it, and sometimes I think we complicate it more than it needs to be, and let's just keep it simple. All right, I'm going to show you how to roast red peppers, but you can roast any vegetable, frozen or fresh. So I'm going to show you a couple of things around that as well. All right, these were just 2 red peppers that I already sliced up. Now there's always this dilemma. Do you use parchment on your sheet tray, or do you just put them straight on the sheet tray? I go back and forth. Parchment is great because it makes cleanup a little bit easier. But again, do I need to be using parchment all the time? Could I just save that and just put it right on the sheet tray? And the answer to that is yes. And I've been doing this more recently. I didn't spray this, but typically you could, you spray your sheet tray. I like to use like an extra virgin olive oil spray. This is no propellant, it's propellant free, which is kind of nice, just olive oil. Spray it. That just will really help with any of the caramelization that happens during the roasting. And roasting is really just dry heat. So it's really like high dry heat. That's what we're doing in the oven. So we're kind of making your oven do all the work for us to help us eat more vegetables each week. All right, so we have these sliced up. I'm going to use, when you put them on your tray, a couple of pointers, right? So nice sheet tray, with or without parchment. I think they do crisp up and brown a little bit better without the parchment, but it's up to you. And I would spray them. Spray it if you want to, but we are going to add some olive oil, so that'll help it from sticking as well. And then you kind of want to make sure that they're not really crowded, because the whole point of this is that you really want to try to crisp them a little bit and brown them. We don't really want to steam them. However, I have been known to really kind of pile them on and I roast them. It just takes a little bit longer to get them brown. So that's fine too. But anyway, I usually try to use 2 sheets, sometimes 3, depending on how many vegetables I'm roasting. And then for this amount, I think you really only need about a tablespoon of olive oil. And this is where, we can get a little heavy-handed sometimes with the amount of olive oil we're using, and it almost ends up we're kind of frying the vegetables in the oven. So I just kind of challenge you to maybe even just measure out a tablespoon so you know what that looks like, and then sprinkle it on and go, oh, does that seem like it's going to be enough? And I can tell right away that a tablespoon is going to be fine for this, because there's not that many. I'm not using a lot of peppers on this tray. And then all I'm going to do is just sort of toss it around a little bit so that all of the veggies that are on the sheet tray get coated in the olive oil. And then again, we're spreading them back out. All right. And then now here's where the seasonings, it's kind of up to you. I like to keep it really, really simple. So basically I just put a little bit of kosher salt. This is Diamond Crystal. It's always what I use. Flaky salt, you could add that later. I don't know. I guess you could do it now, but typically I'm just using Diamond Crystal kosher salt. And as much or as little as you like, just a little bit of sprinkle of that. Sometimes I salt and pepper it. It just depends. I'll go ahead and do that. Because sometimes I feel like the pepper, if it gets on a sheet tray, depending on how long you're roasting them, it can burn a little bit. And that's about it. Typically, I'm just salting them. You don't even have to salt them, but this is it. And then the other seasonings, whether it's, maybe garlic or garlic powder or cumin or Parmesan cheese or something, I don't typically like to season my vegetables when I roast them, because it just kind of depends on how high heat I'm going with the oven and how long they're going to take, because I find that sometimes I'm just burning those spices, because especially if it's in there a little longer than the spices can handle. So I like to sort of take my veggies out and right away while they're warm. If I'm going to season them, I sort of just season them a little bit while they're still warm on the tray, so I can really warm those spices or the fresh herbs or anything like that. So I'm not usually doing it in the oven, with the exception of Parmesan cheese. So if you want a little Parmesan cheese, grated Parmesan cheese, that I'll usually shake it on maybe when I know I only have about 5-10 minutes max left in the oven. And then the Parmesan cheese, you know, will get a little crispy, but it won't burn. If you're going to use Parmesan cheese, I would definitely use parchment paper for that one because the Parmesan cheese will stick to your sheet tray. So anyway, that's it. That's it. So when I'm doing this, I do this in the beginning of the week, sometimes again midweek. Usually I'm doing 2 or 3 sheet trays of different vegetables, and I'll show you those. But for now, today, I'm just going to do the red peppers because I have them. And then when you set your oven, and I'm going to set these for maybe 20 minutes. So a couple quick things about vegetables, and then we'll talk about a few that I just roasted ahead of time. So a couple pointers. All right, so we talked about a few of those things. Now, as far as when you put them in the oven, I usually do it at the lowest rack, and that's where I put them. If I'm going to do several trays of vegetables, then I kind of will rotate them around while they're in there. Oven temperature, usually about 90% of the vegetables when I'm roasting them is about 425. That's the temperature I go to. If I'm doing something like cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes or something that's a little bit wetter, even maybe eggplant or zucchini, then I'll often do 450. If you do higher temperature, then things are going to roast a little bit quicker, but you have to keep an eye on them so you don't, obviously you don't want to burn them. If it's something like potatoes or carrots, anything that's a little bit denser, those I would say definitely 425, even 400 if they need to take longer to cook, so that, anything that's a little bit denser, they're going to just take a little bit longer to soften. But most vegetables, I would say 425, and it can be as little as 15 to 20 minutes, which is, I'll talk about these green beans, or sometimes as long as maybe 40 minutes or more if it's like potatoes or even the carrots. Even broccoli and cauliflower. So I have a head of cauliflower that, you can just cut it into kind of bite-sized florets. The amount of time it takes for things to roast, it just depends on, first of all, how hot the oven is. If it's the hotter, it's going to be faster. And then the size of the vegetable. So if it's a really thin green bean, that's going to cook a lot quicker than a denser piece of cauliflower, let's say. So it really just depends on the vegetable you're using. But I would say the quickest I've ever roasted anything is probably 15 minutes. And usually I like to let it go. I tend to let it go a little longer because I do like them to get really browned and caramelized, because that's the whole point, because it really enhances their natural sweetness. Now, frozen vegetables work. So don't forget that, because sometimes it makes midweek roasting vegetables that much easier, because you can just pull these out of your freezer if you're running out of fresh vegetables and you're not heading back out to the market. So basically what I did ahead of time is that I just did the same thing. I sprayed my sheet tray a little bit. I tossed it with about a tablespoon of olive oil, put a little bit of salt on it, and then this was in at 425. Now, I got a little sidetracked this morning, so 20 minutes would have been plenty for it. And from frozen, so you're not defrosting the green beans. If that makes it even faster and easier, you just take them straight out of the freezer. I really like to use these petite green beans or French green beans. They're a little thinner and less tough than some of the bigger green beans that are frozen. So I prefer the thinner green bean for this, for roasting them. But right from the freezer, right onto the sheet tray, frozen, just, you kind of toss them with a little bit of that oil, a little salt. Then in the oven, and I would say about 20 minutes, you're good to go. You don't have to stir them. You really don't. I think if you don't stir them, then the bottom gets really nice and crispy, and the top might be just a little softer, but still kind of works well. If you want to, you can go ahead and stir. But I left these in a little bit longer, but they really browned up, you can see. So the thing with frozen vegetables, especially these thin green beans, some of these are so crispy because I left them in a little too long. So that you don't want to leave them so long that the vegetables get dry, crispy and dry. You want them to still have some softness in the center. So these are still going to be great. Some of them I could use as croutons on salads, but I left these in a little too long. But I just wanted to show you that frozen green beans crisp up. They will get brown and they will get crisp. Again, just keep an eye on them a little bit because you don't want to necessarily go too far. The other vegetable that I did at the same time, I just rotated the trays, was corn. So I had some frozen corn, just corn, nothing else added to it. Took it right from the freezer, put it on my sheet tray. Again, these two were in the oven at the same time, so I have some pretty crispy brown ones over here. I would say that they're kind of burnt here on the corner. But this, again, probably only about 15 minutes at 425. But they're so sweet and caramelized. And there's some of them are softer, some of them are crispy. The longer they sit around after you take them out of the oven, they are going to lose some of their crispness. They're going to be the most crispy when you first take them out. But I just love roasting corn. It's so good. I use, again, talking about croutons, I use these as like little croutons on my salad. But they're really good. So I just wanted to point out that you don't have to always use fresh. You can use frozen if that's what you have. So we talk about tomatoes. We talk, you can do red onions or regular onions, mushrooms, any kind of pepper, roasted carrots, cauliflower, broccoli. Now, Brussels sprouts, what I find is sometimes depending on if they're a little bit fresher and smaller, then I wouldn't necessarily need to do this. But if they're a little bit bigger and they might be a little more dense, I'll cut them in half. Then I do the same thing we just talked about, but I will cover them with a little foil or even just another sheet tray on top of them and put it in the oven just for the first maybe 5-10 minutes, because that helps to kind of steam the interior and keeps them nice and soft and kind of buttery. And then I'll take the foil off, and then I let it roast for the remaining amount of time, and then they'll get crisped up a little bit. Because sometimes I find if the Brussels sprouts, in order to get them crispy and really browned, then sometimes they get a little too dry or they don't cook as well in the center. But those I will cover. But other than that, most of the other vegetables, you're just going to either cut them into bite-sized pieces, or with carrots, usually I just cut them in strips. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, those I usually either do in wedges or, similar to kind of the look of a French fry. But there really isn't, I don't think cucumbers would work, but for the most part, all vegetables work. And then once you're making them, I'm just looking at my notes, what else do I want to mention? Once you're making them, then you have them all made. So like if you do, I have 3 trays here right now. So I'm going to be using these all weekend long. We'll be in salads. They might go in bowls. I might toss them with a pasta dish. I might put them in a soup if I'm having one. I actually made some vegetable soup, so I might even enhance that vegetable soup with a few of these roasted vegetables. The other thing you can do, if you kind of get a little bit too many and you're not sure what to do with, blitz them up in your food processor or your blender with a little, vegetable stock or something, and then you could make like a real fast and easy pureed kind of soup. It would be almost like a cream soup, but it wouldn't be cream. If you do the roasted vegetables and you don't want to add cream or dairy, if you do the roasted vegetables and put them in a food processor with, say, some vegetable stock, and then some white beans, the white beans will give that thickness. And then you can season it with your herbs and spices however you want to, but you can make a really quick, super easy kind of roasted vegetable soup. And because the vegetables are roasted, they're going to really enhance that flavor. So there's so many different ways to use them. So if you have these already prepped in the beginning of the week, then you have that opportunity to use them all week. And it's, again, just a super easy way to increase your veggies. All right. These are going to have to go, the roasted peppers are going to have to go for probably at least another 10 minutes. So they'll finish up, super easy. Please roast if you're not roasting now. It is probably one of the easiest and one of the most delicious ways to serve vegetables because that oven just, works magic. All right, stay well. We'll be back again next week. We're going to do a little bit more with vegetables. We're going to talk about how to do quick pickles, not just pickles, but pickled vegetables that you can just quickly do and have them in your refrigerator so that they kind of become these little flavor bombs on all kinds of things. All right, so until then, stay well. See you next week. Bye-bye.